as you can see by this chart by the BBC, knife crime is on the rise here in England and Wales. The graph that you see before you indicates year by year between 2011 and 2018 how many crimes there were which involved sharp objects or knives. And as you can see, 2018, which was last year, is the highest recorded amount yet. The main reason for today's video is to talk a little bit about knife crime and why it could possibly be on the rise. Unfortunately though, knife crime is nothing new and has been used to kill people, to torture people for a very, very long time. But why is it on the rise in 2018? Looking back at the graph though, it's kind of interesting because in both 2011 and 2012, those 2 years were very similar to the amount of crimes that were recorded that used knives or other sharp objects. And then from 2013 to 2015, it kind of decreases a little bit. It has quite a dip, and then it starts to increase again from 2016 onwards. And looking at another graph here by the BBC, this actually showcases the types of crimes that knives are used for, and I found this very, very interesting, particularly the very top one, attempted murder. And it really shocked me just how small of a number that attempted murder was compared to robbery, assault, and even threats to kill. So obviously here in the UK we can't get guns easily or anything like that. So I really did think that that attempted murder section would be a lot higher than it is, purely just on the fact that we can't get guns easily here. So I think this proves here that here in the UK, we use knives in crimes like robbery or assault or threats to kill just to kind of threaten our victims and make them feel scared. Something more along the lines of, I have a knife and I could use it, rather than, you know, I'm actually going to kill you with this knife, if that makes any sense. I really hope it does. Again, I'm going to move on to something else, another graph, believe it or not. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of graphs in this video, I do apologise, but it just helps me get across kind of what I'm trying to say to you. So this is something else that shocked me, and it says here that most crimes here in the UK actually don't involve any weapons at all. So that massive light blue chunk on the graph is actually where a crime has happened but no weapon was actually used in that crime. Maybe that's not exactly relevant to this particular video, but I did just want to mention it because it shocked me so much. I actually thought the glass bottles crimes were a lot higher than that. And yes, we're going to look at another graph. I swear, you guys are never ever going to want to see another graph in your life after you finish watching this video, but trust me, this is relevant. So this graph is again from the BBC, and it does show the number of stop and searches in England and Wales. And you can clearly see that from 2009 up to 2018, it is ever so slightly just decreasing and decreasing the number of stop and searches. Why is this? Well, of course, here in England, I've spoke about this in previous videos, but we are all about making cuts everywhere at the moment. It's all about saving money, getting as much money as we can, and we are cutting so many important things to the bone. And that includes the police force. So I think we know for sure that lack of police funding is definitely an issue here with crimes in general, not just knife crimes. My research in particular has shown that London is actually the highest crime rate for knives in the whole of the UK. And I partially think that is just because it is a landmark of the United Kingdom. And it is a tourist trap. Many people go to London every single year, whether you are from Britain or you are from another part of the world. You know, it is a tourist trap, is London. And so I think that many tourists who come here are quite vulnerable, and people take advantage of vulnerable people. People who look like they can't defend themselves, and people who look like they're unsure of the area that they're in. So I definitely think that that's partially a reason why London is so high with knife crimes. It was actually reported that since the start of 2019, so the start of this year, there has been over 60 knife crimes in London alone. And at the time of recording this video, it is only the very beginning of February. So this is definitely a problem here in the UK. And to be honest, I think solely blaming the lack of police funding and the lack of stop and searches going on here in the UK, I think that is just a simple answer and a simple thing to blame the rise of knife crime on. I think there is a much wider issue here that needs to be addressed. Many people are actually also putting the blame on social media and gangs and drugs as well, and alcohol as a reason why knife crime is on the increase, and I definitely agree with that. At the end of the day, I think as well it's going to get worse when the children are off for summer holidays. We have to remember that kids are also victims. Many of these victims of knife crimes are children under the age of 13. And yes, social media does make us vulnerable because often, I think especially children or those in the early teens, I think they are very, very much, they're not as aware of the risks of putting where you are, how long you're going to be there for, what you're doing, all over social media, like pictures, statuses, everything. And I think, often we use social media without a second thought. Like, we are actually exposing our location here. We're making ourselves vulnerable and we're making our location vulnerable. And I really think that we do have to bring up as well that we are a country in turmoil right now. We are a country with very different views on leaving the EU and Brexit, and possibly, because we are a country in so much turmoil right now with many different opinions flying around, that could possibly be another one of the reasons why knife crime is on the increase. I think also we definitely need to be looking into people's financial situations. As I stated in my universal credit video, there are more people than ever here in the UK having to rely on food banks to feed themselves and their families. A lot of people here in the UK right now are in debt. They have money issues they cannot afford, their rent, their mortgage, food, drink, the basics in life. And I think that is definitely a reason when you go back to this graph here that knife crime is a big connection with robbery, because often people do resort to crimes such as robbery when they're in money troubles. They can't afford to purchase anything, so they go and steal it instead, which is very unfortunate. I'm not saying every single person who robs a store is like that or a house is like that, but that is definitely one of the big reasons why people do turn to robbery. Also on street corners, takeaways, everywhere you look nowadays, there seems to be a gang of children, a group of teenagers, or even groups of adults that congregate around those areas, and they will pick on anyone and everyone that walks by or wants to go into a store or anything. Anyone they see is a target. And that is again where trouble arises. And of course, violence is a big thing in terms of just people solving their problems. You have differences, they use violence and crimes as a way to try to solve them. And as well, the final thing that I'm going to mention is cuts to youth services as well. And often youngsters do get caught up very easily in gangs and drug dealing and other sorts of crimes. And so I think we need to bear in mind that there is not really anything else for these youngsters to do apart from just hanging around street corners and takeaways and parks and places like that. And so I definitely feel like we should be really looking into where we are cutting money and the consequences of cutting funding to the police force, to youth services, to the NHS, to all these kinds of areas, because things like this are only going to get worse if people think that they can get away with doing them. And of course, I think we need to educate our youngsters on crimes, knife crime in particular, since it's on the increase. And we need to be saying to these people that this kind of crime is wrong, and these are the consequences of those crimes. People lose their lives, innocent people lose their lives. So I think there are many, many factors of why knife crime in England is on the increase. Did I miss anything out? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave this video a big thumbs up, and if you're new here, click on that subscribe button, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.